Hi, my name is Rachel Hargrove, and I'm a student studying psychology at the University of Colorado Boulder. Today, I'd like to make a video discussing pubescent onset of eating disorders in young girls. Now, before we get started, if you think the content of this video might trigger you, go ahead and close the video now. All right, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive in. So before we talk about pubertal onset of eating disorders in young girls, let's just first go over what eating disorders are. So there's two main diagnoses when we talk about eating disorders. The first is anorexia nervosa and the second is bulimia nervosa. Anorexia nervosa is marked by the refusal to maintain a normal body weight. Also, those with anorexia show a fear of gaining weight and also a marked disturbance in the way that they experience their own body weight. Anorexia nervosa usually begins in adolescence, and it's a very dangerous disorder. Eating disorders themselves are actually one of the most dangerous psychological disorders because of their physical effects on the body. And really what's so terrible about anorexia nervosa is that 5 to 8% of people diagnosed with it will die from the disorder. So bulimia nervosa is marked by binging and purging. Unlike anorexia, those with bulimia are actually usually able to maintain a normal body weight, but they typically engage in compensatory behavior used to prevent excessive weight gain. And some examples of this compensatory behavior are inducing vomiting, misusing laxatives, excessive exercise, and prolonged fasting. So let's look at the prevalence of eating disorders. Eating disorders have increased in prevalence in the past 50 years. About 10% of the population has an eating disorder, and 90% of those diagnosed with an eating disorder are women. This translates to about 10 million females and 1 million males diagnosed with eating disorders in the United States. And when I was doing my own research, what I found to be the most striking was that research shows that 61% of college females show signs of an eating disorder pathology. So what this means is that a little less than 2/3 of women in college engage in some sort of disordered eating. So this could be sub-threshold eating pathology that doesn't necessarily meet the full criteria for DSM diagnosis of an eating disorder, but it could be sub-threshold plus the women who actually do meet the full criteria for an eating disorder. So that's pretty crazy to me. I don't feel like we should be seeing such high prevalence, and this is why I wanted to do a video about this topic. So when we learn more about eating disorders, there's really one time period that emerges as the high-risk period for developing one, and this is puberty. We don't really see 30, 40, 50-year-old women being diagnosed with an eating disorder for the first time. Now, they could have been diagnosed with an eating disorder when they were younger and have continued some of the behavior into their later life, but typically the onset isn't these older ages. Similarly, we're not seeing super young children being diagnosed with eating disorders either. It's pretty rare to see like a 5-year-old with an eating disorder. So it really seems to be this time period in puberty, adolescence, and sometimes emerging adulthood when these pathologies arise. So what about puberty makes it such a high-risk period? Well, let's take a step back and just discuss what's going on during puberty. So there's a lot of biological changes that occur during puberty, such as hormone activation. There's also a lot of social factors. Young girls are often really concerned with fitting in with their peers, by pleasing their parents, and just by fitting in at school as well. There's also a lot of cultural and media forces in play. When I was a kid, it was, picking up a Cosmo magazine and just seeing the photoshopped pictures of women's bodies on the cover and kind of, comparing your body to theirs. But I think it's really insidious now that most teenagers these days have a cell phone and they can just hop on Instagram or Facebook and see these highly edited images of the female body that are not realistic body types for them to pursue. And I think for a vulnerable young girl, this can be really internalized and can change their mindset. So today we'll look at the biological, psychological, and cultural and social factors that play into eating disorder risk for young girls. Also, I don't want you to take my word for it alone, so we'll be employing the use of 5 peer-reviewed journal articles to help explain all of these risks. And don't worry, I've done all the reading for you and I will summarize it next. All right, so first let's look at biological factors. So in a research article written by Klump, whether or not someone has gone through puberty, which is referred to pubertal status, and early onset of puberty significantly increases the risk for an eating disorder. So part of this female-specific risk is due to genetic factors associated with estrogen activation at puberty. Also, girls who mature early experience physical changes of puberty earlier than the rest of their peers, and this can lead to increased body dissatisfaction. Also, the release of estrogen during puberty increases the amount of adipose tissue, which is the amount of fatty tissue, which can also bring young girls away from that thin body ideal that they see in the media. So also, just to review, estrogen is the hormone that really drives the physical changes in puberty. It also regulates genes associated with the serotonin system, and disruptions in the serotonin system have been linked to eating disorder risk. Also, there was a twin study performed that showed that higher estradiol levels in puberty predicted higher eating disorder symptoms. Second, let's look at psychological factors. Research by Evans et al. Suggests that increased depressive symptoms are directly associated with higher eating disorder symptoms in girls but not boys at age 12. So that means when we look at girls and boys at the same age 12, those who are supporting higher depressive symptoms at that time will actually show higher eating disorder symptoms later on, but this is only evident in girls and not in boys. We also see that disordered eating is associated with negative feelings and affect. Research from O'Day and Abraham found that high-achieving, anxious girls who had already undergone puberty were the group most likely to develop an eating disorder. This suggests that prevention efforts should focus on assisting girls in developing healthy ways of coping with negative emotions and in developing habits that increase their self-esteem. All right, so now that we've explored the biological and psychological factors, let's look at the social and cultural factors. Research from Steiner and Dare states that eating disorders are a symptom of a sociocultural problem in our society. When we look at this from a cultural anthropology lens, historically, the image of a woman with a large chest and wide hips seems to represent interrelatedness and human connectivity. Today, we see an image of the thin body ideal perpetuated in media that seems to be a symbol of our culture. And it suggests that our culture does not value female development or identity formation. It's been suggested that perhaps girls develop eating disorders as a way to protest the idealization of thinness in women. So in addition to cultural factors, social factors play into this as well. The researcher Stice found that, not surprisingly, criticism of weight by friends and family is a significant factor in eating pathology in girls. Maternal investment in their daughter's thinness predicted the daughter's eating disorder symptoms. And modeling is also a significant factor here. Pike and Roden found in 1991 that mothers of eating disordered adolescents had greater eating pathology and dietary restraint themselves. So my message to the moms out there is what you do and say really does matter. You should try to model healthy eating habits, and definitely don't criticize your daughter's weight. That can lead to eating pathology. So why does all this matter? Because of the pubescent onset of eating disorders in young girls, it's my opinion that we should try to develop prevention methods targeted to these specific individuals at risk. Also, it's important to understand the causes of a pathology such as eating disorders so that we can develop effective treatments. And I also think it's important to understand the risks from different perspectives when we're treating individuals in therapy. And I would just like to mention that I am not a licensed psychologist, so this video is really just for educational purposes only. If something came up during watching this video, I would strongly suggest that you reach out to a licensed psychologist. And if you do need to find one for yourself, you can find one at www.psychologytoday.com. All right, well, that's it for today. Let me know what you think about this, and I will leave all of the links to articles in the description box below. Thanks.